This is Joyce, the voice of Joyce. Another week, more turmoil. You never know what's going to happen in America next. 4 people from the DOJ resigned in outrage over the Department of Justice interfering in the rule of law. Roger Stone had been convicted by a jury of his peers. The sentencing guidelines were up to 20 years for one count of criminality that they found and 50 years for another. So to recommend 7 to 9 was not outrageous. Now, Barr and Trump are playing the same old game. They do interfere with our justice system, and then they cry either one or the other has been victimized. But we all know they both believe in the absolute presidency. They think if you're a president, you can do anything you want at any time, and whatever it is, there are no consequences. But there are consequences for you and I. We, the people, have many consequences. If we don't spend $58 extra for our rent, we could be evicted. If we don't have the fines that are incurred when we don't have money to make bail in the first place, we could be jailed and the fines compounded. So our question is, are you really better off today than you were 4 years ago? And I think you've really got to ask yourself that seriously. Sure, the stock market is going up, but about 10% of that, of the gross domestic product, is the financial industry. It has nothing to do with manufacturing, with labor, with the gig economy, with folks who are never going to look for work, with diseases of despair, nothing at all to do with Main Street. If you're on Main Street, are you better off today than you were before? Do you see enormous gains in your paycheck? Or are you part, through no fault of your own, of the burgeoning homeless class, as equity continues to take over rental units and folks continue to be out of work or working but homeless? In New York City, 1.5 million children are homeless. There's no excuse when we have mega buildings in this city that are vacant. They've been built literally to only attract the people who will live in the top 4 floors of the penthouse. The other 500 units, nobody wants them. The middle class that's been decimated can't afford it. They're vacant. Might as well give them to the homeless. We're paying $3,250 a month for a room that may not even have a kitchen or a bathroom. Might as well do something else. They haven't come up with it yet. But I just finished reading Utopia for Realists. True, it came out of the Netherlands, and you could say that's a socialist country if you wish. But they have some darn good ideas about what works for people. It seems that nobody thinks about money as much as the wealthy, except for the poor. The poor think about money a lot. The old studies that said the poor are lazy, they're based on erroneous information. Can you imagine an entire political party basing their information on a city in Great Britain back in 1836 to say that the poor are lazy? All the evidence doesn't point that way. It points to the fact that if you give poor people even a couple of $100, it makes a difference in their lives. In Africa, anywhere from $200 to $500 makes an enterprising, not only one person, but an enterprising community where you have entrepreneurs and startups. It's been figured out that in the civilized world, which we're a part of, and have the most income inequality, if we gave people $5,000 extra, we could lift them out of poverty forever. And that's kind of interesting. To me, anyway, since I proposed giving $12,000 to 154 Americans merely by using the bonds that are in Treasury today. Instead of maintaining Wall Street, or in addition to have maintained Wall Street, we could also maintain Main Street. And we wouldn't have a homeless problem. Because unlike the thoughts of other folks, people who are poor don't spend their money frivolously. It's not possible. They are not used to spending their money frivolously. They spend it on necessities, food, education, a job, clothing, housing. It's good for the economy. So imagine if you took my formula that would give 154 million Americans $12,000, and now you cut it to 5, and the economists are saying that would be great. You could give it to almost everyone in the country and have money to spare. That would be a way to get rid of diseases of despair, diseases of suicide, of alcohol, of opioid addiction, because people, when they're well fed, they tend to become better educated, have less kids, and want to be healthy. And healthy makes for a citizenship that cares about the destiny of their country. And it would be a win-win for all of us. If you want to stay with the old ways and the old habits, then we'll continue to have stagnation, and we may have a nihilistic dream. But why should we? Why should we allow people to die prematurely from pollutants that come from the burning of fuels out in Wyoming or the Midwest? In Pennsylvania, they're experiencing deaths prematurely. It's happening all over the East Coast, just like it did during the Dust Bowl. The prevailing winds, only this time, don't hurt the states that are polluting the most. They don't seem to have the death toll that we have in the Northeast. Maybe it's time to have regulation on those emissions. Might be a better idea than the carbon tax that people are thinking of at 75 now to $100 a ton. Might be a better idea. It worked for power generation plants in between states as you travel from one state to another, because utilities are regulated. They are no longer polluting. So we could have a utopia here for realists, and I believe it with all my heart and soul. We never did do that infrastructure program that Trump promised us. And if we did, we would certainly lift everyone out of poverty and utilize them effectively. If we keep going the way we are, if you can't buy drugs now on Medicare or Medicaid, remember, one of Trump's promises is to reduce Medicaid, reduce Social Security, reduce Medicare. He's already working in that direction. He's already giving block grants to states, and that means the states have the discretionary power to either hand the money to Medicaid recipients, or if they're in Trump's GOP, they're going to make you do work that you may or may not get paid for. And everyone knows in the Kaiser Family Foundation that making people work when they're really in need of assistance does not make anyone happier, better adjusted, or well off. In fact, if it was up to me, I'd increase the level of eligibility for Medicaid. $16,000 doesn't cut it. Folks who are making $28,000 can't really survive, and they're part of the homeless problem. And they're working, and most folks on Medicaid are indeed working. So ask yourself, are you really happier today than you were 4 years ago? And if you're not, you've got to vote for change. We cannot afford despair and nihilism. We do have ourselves, our communities, and our planet to save from the global warming and the pollution that's enveloping us. So join me, because no matter who I follow, and if it's not me, it'll be certainly somebody like Bloomberg, but we're going to change this world, and we're going to change it for the better. And it's going to be a utopia for realists. None of us are going to do anything but what makes good common sense. What we're viewing today is something I've never seen in politics before. Sure, politics has been a blood sport. Alexander Hamilton was indeed shot by Barr. There were fistfights on the Senate floor under Lincoln. But the meanness that's pervading our country today, and the obstruction of justice, and the denigration of the rule of law, is not something to be proud of for our country. The rest of the world looks at us in despair because they'd like us to lead. And I think we should be leading again, leading our own people out of poverty, every one of us. And there'll still be enough money for those who have had it for years. So thank you for listening. Hope this was an upbeat message, because I really do think our future is bright. looks like some of the bankers are getting the message. Jamie Dimon is on board for climate initiatives, and so's BlackRock. So let's see what happens, everyone. But I think we don't have to despair. If you have fears, it can do one of two things to you: either pin you to the wall or make you run and be active. I recommend the second. If you feel abused, let your voices be heard. And by all means, make sure you're registered to vote in November 3rd. It's imperative. Thank you for listening, everyone. Have a lovely day, a great week, and I'll see you next Friday. Bye now, and take care. Oh, and if you do want to comment, and if you do have a pressing issue you'd like me to talk about, write me at thevoiceofjoyce@earthlink.net. And if I can convince my over 1,700 followers on Periscope to come join me on YouTube, that would be wonderful as well. Please subscribe. Give me a better voice, a louder voice, and let me help you. Take care, everybody, once again, and have a great day.